The Persistent Visitor. It was a quiet, foggy evening when Emily first heard the knock at the door. Living in a secluded cottage on the outskirts of town, visitors were rare. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and unexpected guests were almost unheard of. Curious but cautious, Emily peered through the peephole. Standing on her porch was a man dressed in a long, dark coat, his face partially hidden by the brim of a wide hat. He stood unnaturally still, not shifting his weight or looking around as most people would. Emily felt a chill but dismissed it, assuming he was a lost traveler seeking directions. "Can I help you?" she called through the closed door. "May I come in?" the man replied, his voice calm and even, but strangely devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry, but I don't let strangers into my home. If you're lost, I can give you directions." There was a long pause. "Please," he said, "I need to come in." Emily's unease grew. "No, I'm sorry," she said more firmly. "I can't help you." The man remained silent for a moment, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog. Relieved, Emily locked the door and went about her evening, trying to shake off the unsettling encounter. The next night, just as she was settling in with a book, there was another knock at the door. Her heart sank as she approached the peephole, and sure enough, the same man was standing there, his posture and expression unchanged. "Please," he said when she called out again. "I need to come in." "No," Emily repeated, more forcefully this time. "You need to leave." The man didn't respond. He simply stood there for what felt like an eternity before finally turning and walking away. Emily watched until he vanished into the night, her sense of dread deepening. For the next several nights, the same scenario played out. The man would knock, ask to come in, and leave when Emily refused. Each night, his persistence gnawed at her nerves, and she found herself double-checking locks and windows, her sleep troubled by nightmares of the strange visitor. One particularly stormy night, the knocking came again, louder and more insistent. This time, Emily didn't go to the door. She stayed in her room, hoping he would go away. But the knocking continued, relentless, pounding against her resolve. "Please," the man's voice echoed through the house. "I need to come in." "No," Emily shouted, clutching her phone, ready to call the police. "Leave me alone." The knocking stopped abruptly. Emily listened, heart pounding, but all she heard was the sound of the storm outside. She waited, straining to hear any sign of the man, but there was only silence. Just as she was beginning to calm down, her phone buzzed with a new message. With trembling hands, she opened it. It was a photo of her front door, taken from the outside. She dropped the phone in horror and ran to the window. Peeking through the curtains, she saw the man standing in the rain, holding up his own phone, staring directly at her. "Let me in," he mouthed silently. Terrified, Emily called the police. When they arrived, the man was gone, but they found footprints in the mud outside, leading away from the house. The officers reassured her they would patrol the area, but Emily felt no safer. She stayed up all night, lights on, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The next morning, exhausted and on edge, she decided to leave the cottage and stay with a friend in town until she felt safe again. As she was packing, there was one last knock at the door. This time, Emily didn't hesitate. She grabbed her things and bolted out the back, running to her car. As she sped away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The man was standing in the middle of the road, watching her leave, his hat shielding his face, his figure slowly disappearing into the distance. Emily never returned to the cottage. She sold it and moved far away, hoping to leave the memories of those terrifying nights behind. But sometimes, late at night, she would hear a knock at her door, and her heart would race, wondering if he had found her again, waiting patiently for her to let him in.